And we have some breaking news on this Monday. Tiger Woods has just withdrawn from competing at the Genesis Invitational, of course, a tournament he hosts this year to be played on Torrey Pines South. We've been building up for this week. It was an interesting last couple of days, maybe some surprise that we thought he was going to play, and now the news that he won't.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him even commit to the Genesis Invitational. I understand sort of the pull. His tournament benefits his foundation. You know, obviously he has reasons that way. Competitively, this was most likely going to be the only competitive reps that he was going to get ahead of the Masters, so I understand all that. But, you know, he just had a traumatic event over the past week or so with his mom, Tida, passing away. You don't know how he's grieving with that as well. The forecast also didn't look particularly conducive for sort of the health issues that he has with temperatures in the 50s, rainy, wet, difficult. Not totally surprised. It is obviously a surprise to see him WD, but I was sort of surprised to see him even in the field at all.
Yeah, I was surprised that he committed to play. I'm also surprised that he withdrew. Everyone grieves in their own way in the amount of time that they need to. We don't know the reason why, whether he will ever give one or not. But listen, we just know that this was going to be a big story either way, whether he was going to play or whether he was not going to play. And now we just have this statement from Tiger Woods. This is just coming up now. I plan to tee it up this week, but I'm just not ready. I did my best to prepare, knowing it's what my mom would have wanted, but I'm still processing her loss. Thanks to everyone who has reached out. I hope to be at Torrey later in the week and appreciate the continued kindness since my mom's passing. So there you go. There's a son
totally reasonable
processing the death of his mom.
Yeah, totally reasonable explanation. I think everyone would certainly understand that. You know, over the past couple months, the conversation has been about, is Tiger ready competitively? You know, he talked to the PNC Championship. Yeah. I'm not ready to compete at this level. By all accounts, he had gotten to a point where he's able to put himself inside a signature event with 72 players, the very best in the PGA Tour. And then you have, obviously, the death of his mother sort of throwing a wrench in those plans. Obviously, best wishes to Tiger. We'll be curious to see if he still sort of fulfills the tournament obligations he has as well as tournament host, but not going to be in the field this week.
It had to be difficult when you lose a parent. We just saw Tida a week before her passing. She was at TGL, had that fun interaction with Tiger. Tiger told her, "I'm not going to suck tonight, Mom," and just kind of some more insight into their close relationship. And then she was gone. He's releasing the statement, you know, and their love and their relationship. She, of course, shotgunned for so many of his great moments. And then she passes away suddenly, and he tries to play, and now he just says, you know what, it's just not the right time for me to be able to do that.
And you think back to when Tiger's father, Earl, passed in May 2006, right? And he shows up at the U.S. Open, admittedly was not quite ready, then shuts it down for another month, and then turns up at the Open Championship and wins that one. Everyone grieves differently, and I certainly understand that, but I think the unexpected nature of Tida's unfortunate passing is totally understandable that Tiger Woods would sit this one out.
Yeah, let's continue this conversation with Haime Diaz, a longtime golf writer and contributor here at Golf Channel Now. You've covered Tiger longer than anyone. Haime, your reaction to the news that Tiger now will not tee it up this week at Torrey Pines?
Well, I think Ryan just made a great point. You know, Tiger took Earl's loss hard and in somewhat of a delayed reaction. It really hit him at the U.S. Open in 2006. And, you know, it's only been a week with Tida's loss. And it's maybe even a tougher one because this comes later in life, and she's been a grandmother and so, you know, just so vital to his everyday life that it's totally understandable that he's not quite over that. Could be other things physical, but I think psychologically that's got to be the biggest factor. And as Ryan also pointed out, he won the British Open in 2006 right after that. So I think when he does come back, it'll be with an extra determination, and he'll want to dedicate it to his mom's memory.
I mean, I know you touched on it last week when Tida passed away, but what do you think is her enduring legacy? Earl Woods gets so much credit and is part of the news cycle, but Tida behind the scenes, what do you think was her importance to Tiger, and what do you think her enduring legacy will be for him?
Well, I think her enduring legacy is that she was always there, unconditional love, no matter what, thick and thin, a lot of difficulties being Tiger Woods, the fame, all the demands. She was the person he could go to and, you know, not necessarily have long discussions about it, but just feel real, you know, comforted and knowing that he had support no matter what happened, whatever decisions he might make publicly, which he often got criticized for, he was scrutinized for. If he had her blessing on those things, I think he felt very secure in the decisions he made. So I think that was huge. I think just, her competitiveness, obviously Earl was competitive too, but Tida even more so. And Tida was very organized, very, very much buttoned up. Earl, he was certainly a guy from the military, but his own personality was a little looser and more fun as far as just, being spontaneous. Tida could be spontaneous, but always with a plan to be extremely, very methodically ordered. And I think Tiger really took to that. That might have been just hardwired in him. But I think his mom example had a big role in that as well. And just so many things as far as the way she was really a very tough person, but a very loving person. Somebody who, didn't trust easily, but when she did, it was all the way. And I think Tiger exemplifies that. He's got really close friends, but a small circle. And Tita was like that too.
Jaime, I imagine it's difficult for the legends to see their skills diminish, to become a #1 player, to becoming a ceremonial golfer, or just less than you were. How do you think Tiger Woods is going to handle the next playing chapter, whatever it looks like?
I don't think he believes he's entered it completely. And, it's interesting. I know we came on today thinking he was going to be playing, and I was watching Brandel's breakdown of his swing at the TGL, and it really was a dynamic golf swing that he was making. I mean, it wasn't 2001 Tiger Woods, but it was better than it's been. And it's a fairly youthful body still, as beat up as it's been. He's an athlete. He's a superstar athlete. He's an incredible genius athlete. And a lot of that is still in there. I'm not saying he can do it, but because there's so much to golf. I really, when I think of him now, I worry almost more about his short game and his mental game, because he gets, these moments where he just kind of seems to lose the focus where he never used to. But I think if he's not in pain and he's pushing off that right foot as he was with the swing that Brandel was breaking down, I just feel like he's still capable. I'm not saying he's going to be a winner all the time at all. I'm only saying I think he plays a very respectable PGA Tour quality game, and he can still do it if he's feeling okay. Now, obviously, things like this, create doubt. That can he go 72 holes? Can he walk? But you watch him move as he's walking now, and it's the gait is a lot more graceful and a lot smoother, and the golf swing keeps getting better. So I think if he's feeling less pain, he's still a legitimate player, just like Phil Mickelson was when he won the PGA championship. Without the injuries, of course, those are always the X factor with Tiger. But the big thing about Tiger is he's so determined, so focused. And you go back to Ben Hogan, and after his car accident, obviously 53, had an incredible year. But even after that, as he aged, he still would play in the U.S. Open and be very credible. Almost won it a couple more times. Did win in Colonial in 1959. Almost won the U.S. Open in 1960. I just think the greats have a capacity if they want to do it. And I really get the sense that Tiger still wants to do it. I know when he gets out on that senior circuit, not to say he's going to play all the time, but he really wants to win that U.S. Senior Open. So I think a lot of this is preparation for that as well.
I was just going to ask, Haime, why do you think he still wants to do it? What do you think is still the driving force for Tiger? Is it records? Is it Charlie? Is it ego? Where do you sort of fall on that?
Well, that's great, Ryan. I mean, I think it's all three. I think more than anything, it's just love of the game. I think it's just the most fulfilling thing he does. Other than obviously his family, but in terms of his activities and what he expresses himself with as an artist, really as an athletic artist, that's what gives him a thrill. That's why he keeps practicing all the time. That's why he likes going out with the young guys and testing himself, and just being able to do it at that high level for as long as he can. He doesn't want to let go. I mean, that's the thing about Tiger. There's just no quit in him, and he doesn't want to quit. His career. There's always the thought, oh, go out on top. Don't let your legacy be in any way, diminished. I don't see it that way. I think, the great ones just keep playing as long as you feel like you want to, and you'll know when it's time. And I don't think he thinks it's time yet. Obviously, he's been robbed of some years because of injuries, and I think he wants to make up for those still. So I think Charlie's a big factor. Absolutely. He's kept him younger and active, and I think he wants to set that example for him and show him what it's all about inside those ropes. And I think that the father and son, when they play there, that's one of the greatest things Tiger's ever felt, probably. And I don't think he wants to give that up at the highest level.
Jaime, I was fortunate to walk inside the ropes with Tiger 06 at Hoylake, also at Medina for the PGA Championship. I was struck by his hands. He hit a shot into the 72nd hole. The tournament was already won at that point, and how soft his hands seemed on the club. So everybody talks about his power. How important and crucial and critical have his hands been to everything he's accomplished in this game?
Well, I think it's the most underrated part of it because as a young player, we're talking really young, 5, 6, 7 years old, he's winning tournaments. He's playing against 10 and 11-year-olds, and he's hitting it, way shorter than they are. So where did he try to make that up? Obviously, he could hit the ball solid, not that far, but he could outperform them with his short game. And he became a short game specialist when he was like 8 years old. That's where he spent his time on the putting green and the chipping green, especially with John Anselmo later. After Rudy Duran taught him, he would make a point of spending most of his time because he had fun with it. He liked creating shots, but he also knew that was the difference. He was getting the power, but he knew a lot of the guys who had power that he was playing didn't have great short games. He was going to have both. And as he extended that into his pro career, he just wanted to have everything. I mean, if there was a weakness, he was going to work on it and hopefully make it a strength, but certainly not a weakness any longer. So I think those special shots and the special feel for the club and, club head awareness, as they say, out on the PGA Tour, he's exceptional with that. And I think he knows he has, I keep using that word, genius level in his hands. And his hands are the difference maker. When his timing's not right, he can save shots. He used to talk about that all the time. I had my C game, but my hands saved me. So I guess Damon, all the great ones have great hands. I know talking to Cliff Drysdale once, an old tennis player who plays a lot of tennis with Jack Nicklaus. And when Jack could still play a lot of tennis, great around the net, tremendous, volleys and reflex shots and touch. And Jack was an athlete and Tiger's an athlete. And I think the hands might have been their greatest attribute.
Wow. I mean, your perspective is absolutely priceless. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Here he is, Jaime Diaz, as the news of the day. Tiger Woods withdrawing from the Genesis Invitational at Torrey Pines. More on this story, and Aaron Oberholzer joins us as well.